Hey everyone, I hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome back to another Web Dev Junkie video. So in this video, I want to give you a quick overview of how you can set up Cypress inside of your web application. So if you don't know what Cypress is, it's basically an end-to-end test runner where you can basically load up a browser and command a robot to basically click buttons and then verify that certain things happen. So if you know anything about testing and the testing triangle, end-to-end testing is part of the top of the triangle, which means that you should write not that many of them, but probably just write enough to verify that your application's most critical flows work. So for example, can a user log in? You might want to use the end-to-end test with that. Can a user purchase an item? You might want to use the end-to-end test with that. But all the other things you could probably test with integration testing or unit testing. But if you're interested in learning more about Cypress and end-to-end testing, be sure to stick around. So I've been working on this open source project a little bit, just kind of helping out here and there. If you go to Dennis Ivy's YouTube channel, he talks more about his Mumble project. But basically, I decided to try to add in Cypress so that we can start writing some end-to-end tests over this application as it potentially gets larger. So this is the Cypress Open Runner. So you can see here we have the tests that have been ran, and you can kind of click through every step of the way to figure out what's going on. So I wrote a simple test that basically hits the login page. You can actually like hover over and go back in time to see what the test did at this step. So you can see here, I went to the login page, and then it does another part of the test that says can load the dashboard, which visits the dashboard here. So if I click that, you'll see it load up the dashboard. And then finally it says can navigate to the settings page via the profile dropdown. So let me just go ahead and move my head over there. But you can see here, I can actually click on these different things. The first part of the test, it clicks on this toggle icon, well actually gets it, and then it clicks it, and then you'll see that the navigation drops down, and then it gets the user settings, and then it clicks it, and then it verifies that it redirects the user to a new URL that has /login in it. So it's a really basic end-to-end test. It's really not even testing that much, but it's just enough that you can hook this into your continuous integration environment, such as GitHub Actions, to know if someone were to commit code and potentially break the ability for someone to hit the login page or break the ability for them to go to their settings page via the dropdown, you would notice that really quick in your end-to-end automated testing. So that's basically an overview of the Cypress dashboard. You can do some other things here, like rerun the tests here. Another cool thing to mention is that as you actually modify your Cypress test suite or your test code, this is going to rerun, okay? So every time I go into my test file and maybe click save on my spec, so let me go to my spec file. If I click save, you'll notice that it's going to rerun my test. So this allows a really quick feedback loop of writing your tests and then seeing them being verified in your UI. So I think that's pretty cool. You can also change like the width of your viewport. So if you wanted to test on like what a mobile view looks like or a really large monitor, you can do that. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this test runner. So I definitely recommend you check it out. But if you're at the point where you're convinced that you should probably use this, let me give you a quick overview of how you can set it up. So you first want to install Cypress. So it's a npm package you install with Cypress, and you probably want to use a dev dependency there. And then secondly, I created two scripts here. I could do Cypress or Cypress open, right? And so what these do, Cypress run is something that's just going to run in your CLI down here. So you can use that for like your GitHub action. You can use it for, I don't know, your Jenkins, your CI/CD pipeline running. But Cypress open is that UI that I just showed you where you can manually click on the stuff and see what the UI looked like as the test was running. And that's really all you have to do with the package.json file. But before you can actually get this working, you need to create a Cypress folder. And inside that Cypress folder, you need to create an integration folder. Now there's some other folders here as well, which I don't think I actually had to create. So maybe when I set up Cypress following the docs, it kind of created these folders and files for me. But the file that was important to create is your integration test. So I have a sample spec here. And again, I just follow the docs on the Cypress webpage. They're really straightforward. But so you basically write your Cypress tests very similar to how you'd write like Jest. So you have like a describe block, and inside the describe block, you can pass some options. So in this case, I'm passing a viewport width and height. And then finally, you run your actual test code. Okay, so this is a block that contains a bunch of different if statements that correspond to the steps in your test. So if I go back to the runner, you'll notice that we have 3 checkboxes here. And on the left, we have 3 if statements. So those kind of correspond to the different sections or parts of your test. And then inside of this, you can do some Cypress commands. So the most important one probably is cy.visit. This will actually change the browser's URL to whatever page you want. So this is where I'm basically making sure I can hit the login page. I'm also making sure I can hit the dashboard here. And then finally, there's some other commands such as getting elements. You can do cy.get and use like a selector to grab an element by an ID or a class. And then you can do commands on that. So you can click, if it's an input box, you can do, I think, Cypress.type. You can send commands to an input box, and then you can maybe hit like an enter button if you wanted to check the form can actually be submitted with an enter button. And then there's also assertions, right? So you can check, make sure the URL should include /settings. So when I go to that top right navigation bar and I click on the icon and I click on this link that popped down, I should have been redirected to a settings page. So that is all this test is doing, and I think it's a really basic test, but it's a good enough test to verify the stuff didn't just randomly break when people are changing code. Now, the last part of this video I want to talk about, which I think is also really important, is how do you integrate this with GitHub Actions? Okay, this one is really straightforward as well. So if you go to your GitHub Actions, if you don't know what this is, it's basically a way to run CI/CD inside of GitHub. They have a lot of cool things, so check this out, read up more about it if you're unfamiliar with this. But basically, when anyone commits code to your repository, it's going to run these commands to verify your code is working as it should be. And one of those commands we want to add in is this Cypress test runner, right? We want to run our end-to-end tests over our code base before we accept them and commit them into our master branch. So this is how you do it. You basically just make another step inside your main job. And the keyword is you need to say use Cypress IO GitHub Actions at v2. This will allow you to use the Cypress runner, and then you can kind of supply some parameters to it. So I'm going to say with working directories front end, because that is where our code is located. It's located in this front end folder. And then we also give it a command of like what we should run before Cypress starts running. So in this case, I'm running locally. I actually have my web server running on my other terminal here, right? So you can see that I have the React app running on port 3000. Well, I need to tell Cypress inside of my GitHub Actions that, hey, you probably need to also start up a local running server so that Cypress can test against something. So when I commit code to a PR, this will actually run. So just to kind of show you that this is working, I went to a PR here of this repo, and if I click on this checkbox and kind of dive into the details of one of these runs, I can scroll down and see that there's a run Cypress step. So if I click this, you'll notice that it does a bunch of stuff. It like installs Cypress, it gets the test ready, and then it runs my 3 tests that I showed you earlier, and it tells me that they're all passing. And if any of these were to fail, it would have stopped the build right then, and it probably would have put an X, a red X here. So people who are reviewing the PR can know that, hey, the changes that you're introducing is actually breaking the code. So I could actually decide not to merge this in if I see that there's an X here. All right, so that is basically an overview of how you can use Cypress and how you can set it up in your project with GitHub Actions. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up because it helps my channel grow. Also, if you have comments or suggestions of how you might have used Cypress in the past or what some cool tools you can use with Cypress, leave a comment below. And then also, if you're new to this channel, be sure to click that subscribe button because I'm gonna have other videos like this in the future that should hopefully help you become a better web developer. All right. Happy coding.